I like to have better memory, that's like people saying, well, I like to be a lot better at, like this hobby or this sport or whatever. Like, what specifically do you want to get better at? But I think the principles are like, there's three things that cover 90% of why you forget something or why you remember. In fact, I find that people who have if I'm modeling like people who just have really strong memories in a specific area, they have all three of these. And so I use MOM, M-O-M, as an acronym, because we remember like Holmes and why you remember certain things like Roy G. Biv and all that stuff. MOM, it's kind of like the mother. Like I just did POP, and the patterns of power. So you have MOM here. And so like how many people honestly you want to be better at remembering names? That you're bad at remembering names right now. How important is it in business? A little bit or a lot. It's like everything, right? So yes, you could visualize things, and yes, you could repeat things. But like what I like, the psychology for me is this. Is like really let's get into what drives behavior, right? And so I'm thinking like, let's say there's a suit. Let's raise your hand again if you have trouble remembering people's names, right? Honestly. And you've already forgotten people's names today. Let's say there's a suitcase here of $100,000 cash for you and your business or your favorite charity if you just remember the name of the next person you meet. How many people raise your hands if you're going to remember that person's name? Right? Now, how? Like now we have a room full of memory experts, right? Like, but what technique did you use? What technique? No technique. So I just want to point this out. As a coach, notice it had nothing to do with your potential. It had nothing to do with your capacity for remembering someone's name. What did you want to do? You wanted to remember the person's name. So the M is motivation, right? So I always, scale my motivation on a scale of 0 to 10. Like how much do you want to remember the person's name? Because reasons reap results. You ask yourself why. Like I would actually remember people. I would actually ask myself and train myself. Why do you want to remember the person's name? I'll be conscious of it instead of just telling some story or thinking about what I'm going to respond to or whatever. I ask that question, I get that answer. I was like, because if I don't want to remember the name, it doesn't matter, right? Because motivation is key. What is your motive for action, right? Reasons reap results. And so I would ask myself, I do a check and say, oh, my motivation is only a 5. Well, how can I make it a 7? I'll just think, I just really want to show this person respect, or I want to close this deal, or I want to, practice this thing that I learned, during this session, because practice makes permanent, right? And so that's the key. The O is, you've seen this, right? Take your hand, shake it out. You've been on the computer, you're typing, your phone. Make a fist, put it to your chin. Now where's your chin? Okay, so we know this because the O stands for observation. So we live in a culture where our minds are everywhere, right? But it's not here, right? And so a lot of people blame their retention for something, and it's nothing to do with their retention, it has everything to do with their attention. So, who's really good with this? President Clinton, extraordinary with his ability to remember names, right? And so I left the X-Men set on that Sunday. So I was there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It was the most amazing experience to see like my superheroes growing up as a 7-year-old come to life right on screen and be able to eat with them and work out and share knowledge and everything else like that. But I had to leave because I had to go to this charity event. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to go here and be present. So I leave, and there's 2,000 people, much like this conference, and the table is here, and I sit down at my side table, and all of a sudden, put an image in your mind. Forrest Whitaker sits right next to me. I'm like, whoa, I'm a big Forrest Whitaker fan, that's cool. And then right next to Forrest Whitaker sits Richard Branson. Right, I'm like, oh, this is a cool table. And then across from me is Ashton Kutcher and his twin brother. And then a few minutes into dinner, President Clinton sits right next to me. And I'm thinking, and I had met him before, but this man, like, let me tell you this, like, the lesson I've learned. So when the first time I met him, I was like, I do some things in memory. I just wanted to find out, like, what memory tips do you have? How do you remember everyone's name? Because he's extraordinary at that. He can meet you once, and then, like, 6 months later, meet you and know exactly who you are. And I hear these stories about his grandfather and how early on he would tell stories to all the grandchildren and how they would be quizzed and you have to listen and you have to really pay attention and all this. But then I realized that it was that, yes, he was trained for it, but then also I noticed when I was sitting at dinner with him, like there are a lot more important people in this room than and certainly at this table, but when he's talking to you, here's his thing. How many people agree, regardless of your political bent, he's got charisma, right? He's a connector, he's an amazing communicator. He also has this powerful presence. How many people feel like you see that on media or if you ever met him? Like, I think his powerful presence comes from being powerfully present. Do you know what I mean? Like when he's talking to you, he's talking to you and like nobody else exists. And it's almost unnerving because you're not used, in the age we live in right now, you're not used to that kind of attention. But he's like there, laser focused, nothing else exists. Because most of the time when you're meeting somebody, who does this? How many people are looking over their shoulder? Who else is important in the room? Who else? Or if they're not externally doing that, they're auditorily distracting themselves. What am I? They're not even, because they're not in their mind. They're in their mind and they're thinking not, you know, being present and what they're saying. They're thinking about how they're going to respond. And how many people feel like when you're meeting someone brand new, you're not really focused on what's going on in the moment. You're thinking, how am I going to reply to that and be clever and get this business or whatever it is? That takes you out of the present, right? So powerful presence would also, if somebody's completely here in the now, would explain why they have such an amazing memory. It's one word, right? You can remember someone's name, right? It's just you're not present for it because you're outside or inside. And then the other M in MOM stands for mechanics. And these are the tips, the techniques, the strategies, the best practices on how do you remember names. Here's 7 tips for remembering names. How do you learn another language? Oh, here's 3 great tips on how to learn language in half the time. You know, how do you remember PIN numbers or passcodes or give a speech without notes or, you know, that kind of stuff? Strategies, right? Mechanics. And so that's kind of my framework that I use when it comes to memory.
So Clint, your name?
Yes, yes. So. But that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the what I'm looking to do is the outliers. Like you look at the people who are